Hi, everybody in middle school, 5th through 8th grade, and welcome to another day this week in computer class where we are doing part two of a Scratch project. In past years, I had maybe a little bit longer, more involved Scratch project. This year, I decided to go with, since we're in remote learning, virtual learning, and it is very different than having people in class, two smaller, simpler Scratch projects. The first one that we're doing now is going to be a game. The second one is not. It's going to be a little different. And we started it last week. If for any reason you did not do that Scratch project last week, you really can't go move on to today and do the steps today before you go back and do that. So if for any reason you didn't do last week, you skipped last week, you were absent last week, whatever the case may be, please go back and everything is still posted, everything is still there. Watch and work on last week's lesson. But for those of you who were here last week, the video wound up being a lot longer than I really like them to be. And I am trying very, very hard to make this week's shorter, and we'll make it as short as I can. So very quickly, I'm going to note that we should know how to get to the Scratch website and log in. We talked last week about this login pattern. We also mentioned that there are a couple people in each grade that have a slightly different pattern where they have to add a letter, or in one case, two letters, to your last name. More so than usual. You should know who you are from last week. If not, there's the screen right here. You could always pause it, take a look, and come back to it. So there should be no problems logging in. Now, on to the Scratch game. Let me actually get back to the Scratch home page. Once you get there and you sign in, one thing that happens that people do is they sometimes go and click Create every time they sign into Scratch and want to go work on something. But that's only for when you want to create a brand new project. Since this is something that we already did, we already have saved, we need to go to this folder right here of your My Stuff or your projects. And you can see in mine, I have a lot because I have Scratch projects for years now that I've done with kids. And this one, which is brand new for this year, is called Dodgeball. So I see it there. You may just have that one, or may just have a few, a little less than me. But what we want to do to be able to work on it is click on See Inside. Right? It'll take a second to load, and then once we do, we're at the same screen as we did last week. And let's talk just very quickly about last week. What we should have, we went over all the different sections, all the different things, and what we should have is basically a splash screen for a background, right? That starts off the game when you click the green flag, and one sprite that is able to move and be the playable character who we are going to use in the game. And we customized a few things about the code for each to make that backdrop or splash screen work in the beginning, and to make the player also be able to move in the correct way we need them to, which is left and right with the left and right arrows. Now, very quick note about saving. If for some reason right now you go and look at yours and you say, wait a minute, it doesn't have this, or this thing that I know I did isn't working right. I'm going to compare it to Google because somebody asked last week, and I maybe didn't go into detail, in that Scratch does save by itself online to the cloud just like Google. The one difference is that it's kind of on a timer, whereas Google, it's really, really fast and instant, pretty much every second or with every change you make. Scratch, it saves more on a timer. So if I, in Google, was to type a word and then go and close, it's most likely, as long as I had a good internet connection, going to be there when I go back to it the next time. If in Scratch, I go make a change, like let's say I added this random block in and then I just X'd out right now, it is possible that that block, that change that I made, would not be in my project the next time I opened it. It gives you a little indicator right here. See where it says Save Now? It's basically on a timer where it's going to go, and every certain increment of time, and I'm not sure what it is, 45 seconds, a minute and a half, 90 seconds, every so often, it does save it automatically. It does save it online, but that means that if I made this change and that I X out, I could lose that, and it shows us that that text Save Now is there. So that if I know I made changes and I have to close or sign out or go to a different site right away, I can click that, and I'll try to mention today at the end to make sure we do that. However, this goes for right now, for what we did last week, for anything today. You always have my screen. So you can always look, compare what I have to what you have, And if for some reason yours isn't working, here's the code for my backdrop, and you saw the code for my sprite. You could pause this video, you could have yours side by side and compare and see where there's a difference, where there's something that's not working. Actually, let me remove something that I was working on before this video, but you could always go and make that comparison to make up something you missed, make up something that's not working, and fix any problems that you have. Anyway, moving on, let's see what we're going to do today. Today, we have a couple details, but our main goal is that we want to add in obstacles. We want to add in something that our character has to dodge, something that's going to be kind of the main obstacle in the game. And we also want to have a score. We want to have a score that works when our certain things happen or our main character does or does not do something. So we want to add those things in today. A little detail before we get to that. We did a great job on the backdrop where we made a nice little splash screen. What we didn't do last week is add in our main playable backdrop for the stage. So we're going to do that very quickly. I am on my stage and backdrop tab. I'm going to go to backdrops. I see that I have two of them now. If you happen to still have that white page, it's not a big deal, but you could have that as a third. And what I want to do now is go add in a custom backdrop that's going to be the main one that the game is played on. So I'm going to hover my mouse. I can do it on this button here or this button here. Either way, it really doesn't matter. Hover my mouse over, go to the magnifying glass, and we are going to pick one from the Scratch library. Now, really, you could pick any one you want. Doesn't much matter. You might find later on that this doesn't look as good as you thought it was going to, or based on how the game works, it seems a little odd, and you could go and switch it. That's something that may come up with just about everything we do, and it's no problem. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a simple backdrop of this blue sky, and again, you could choose whichever one you want for right now. Now, once I have it, I note, okay, that's my third backdrop. For you, maybe it could be your fourth if you still had that white page is the first one. And I'm going to note the name. It's blue sky. Okay. Now I go to my code. And if I remember, I have this repeated sequence right here for my splash screen. The only thing that I need to happen right now is on my looks tab or my looks group of code. It has switch backdrop to. I want to bring it and put it outside of my repeat loop. If you put it inside your repeat loop, this would not work right and do something that you don't want. And when that green flag is clicked, it repeats that number of times for the splash screen. And then at the end, once it's all done, it's going to set the black backdrop to. I take a look at my drop down. It's on the one that I want, blue sky, and that's the one that's going to be playable for the game. Let's give it a quick test. Okay, and that all is working perfectly. That's exactly what I want. If you find that later when we are going to do things or go make this work that, hey, something would have been better, a change would have been better, it's no problem at all to do. Now, we are going to add in one enemy or obstacle that is going to fall from the sky that our main character has to dodge. Remember, we can move our main character only left and right. Okay? Now, I'm going to go to my my sprite library rather, right here in this sprite tab, and I'm going to click on search, and I want to find something that is a pretty compact shape, and let me show you what I mean. This button right here, that's a compact shape, right? A circle, a good shape to use, would work pretty well. This cat, it has all of the different offshoots with the paws, with the tail, would not work very well. This cat would not work very well. Things that are longer horizontal, left and right, like these two cars right here. Things that have like hands or legs or wings or things coming off of them. This dragonfly, they're not going to work as well. You can basically pick whichever sprite you would like, whichever one that you want to choose. But depending on which one you pick, you may have to go back and change it or may decide, oh, this didn't work as well for a couple different reasons. If you start off by picking a compact one, this tennis ball, this sun, this soccer ball, the rocks, the pufferfish, this planet,
This owl would work fine. This muffin would work fine. An orange, this other orange. The monkey, except for maybe a little issue with the tail, that would probably work fine. If you pick something compact, the jelly donut would work fine. Something compact, then it's going to work better. But I'm going to pick this apple, and that's what I'm going to use for my second sprite or my obstacle. Now, once we have it there, the first thing we want to think about is the size. With mine, to tell you the truth, I could probably leave mine exactly how it is and it would be fine. That size is not bad. Some of you will find you'll add in your sprite and it adds in bigger, right? The size looks bigger, and it is something that you have to kind of eyeball. That you have to just use your judgment because there's no exact size, there's no exact measurement, there's nothing I'm going to say has to be this. But for a little guide, you want to think about how many of these could like fit across or up and down. And this apple's pretty good. If it was a lot bigger, let's just change this apple to be 200% the size. And see that? That's too big. That's going to make the game a little harder to play, a little unplayable. I don't really need to change mine, but just to give it a little change, right here in the sprite properties, I'm going to change mine to 90. 90% of what it originally was, still pretty close. Maybe a tiny bit smaller. Don't want to go too small. If you went and yours looked like this, if you change it 20%, that is going to make the game harder to play or unplayable or not as good, maybe too easy even in a different way. But in any case, I like 90% for my apple. If you just use your judgment, think about how big the stage is versus how big my apple is, try to make it something around there. Now, we're going to start coding this obstacle, right? And I'm going to move pretty quickly, but here's the thing. You could go back and watch it again. You could pause it once I get to the end. You can do all those things that we've talked about a lot of times. And I'll try to explain what I'm doing and why. But to make this video shorter, I'm going to go a little bit fast. The first thing I'm going to do is add in an event, and it's the most common event that we use, which is when the green flag is clicked. The next thing I want to do is set this enemy or this obstacle's position. And I'm going to do that by going to the motion section and going down to set X and set Y by. I need both of them. It doesn't really matter which order you add them, so I'm going to add in my set X and then add in my set Y. Now, with my set Y, I'll do that first. That one we can make just one single number. And I'll very quickly show you. Most people should know this. I've explained this before if you've had me before, but if you're new, these numbers and where they come from. This is an XY coordinate grid or coordinate plane, and you see your X axis or X line in the center going horizontally, your Y axis or Y line in the center going vertically. The very center is 0 for all coordinates. As you move to the right, that raises the X number up higher. As you move to the left, X number lower, up, Y number higher, down, Y number lower. And you see it even gives you the edge numbers. This is negative 240. This is positive 240. This is positive 180. This is negative 180. Okay, so the numbers that we're about to use, that's where they come from and why they are what they are. So let me get rid of that very quickly. And back to my code, I'm going to set Y to always be 180. That's going to put it, and with some of these, I think I know what's going to work best. I might go back and make small changes, but that happens all the time. No big deal. 180 is going to put it always at the top of my screen. Now, X, that's where it is left and right. Sometimes we're going to want that left, right, center. We want it to change. We want it to be kind of random. So we don't want one single number. What we want is to put in an operator. See how we have this operator section right here? And it gives us a pick random block, which is great. And it fits right inside this circle that we're going to use for our X coordinate. If you think about the numbers and you remember those edge numbers that we said earlier, I'm going to use that to say, well, I want to pick random between negative 240 and positive 240. So that every time this apple or this obstacle starts, it's going to start at the top, but randomly somewhere left, right, center. Now, we want to go to our control group of blocks and put in a forever, something that's going to happen over and over and over. And to add the motion of this falling, right? And falling and trying to hit our main character, we want to change. Think to yourself if you could figure out if that's going to be its x coordinate or its y coordinate. Well, if you think about that line that went vertically up and down, that was the y axis. So we want to go back to motion and we want to do change y by. So we look down and we find change. Don't get confused between the change and the set. Make sure you're matching yours to the ones that I say because they do two different things. So we want to change y by and then a number. Now right now it's set to 10. If you think about how I said on that y-axis, negative numbers go down, positive numbers go up, this would make the apple float up. Okay, so we want this to be a negative number so that it goes down, and that's a negative 10. If you remember from our motion the other week making the character move, if we changed it to negative 5, that would move in smaller increments, and so it would move a little more slowly. If we changed it by negative 20, that would move more quickly in larger increments, and those numbers may come into play later in this project. But that's the basic method how our apple is going to fall. But we don't want it to only fall. Excuse me. We want it to fall. And if it gets down low, like right here, see how it's peaking out down low, it gets to a certain point, we want it to then start back up at the top. So what we're going to do is add in an if-then statement. And while I'm adding it in, let me just say if-then statements are one of the most well-known or common things in programming because they come from our regular life and the human brain. Our brain is made up, among other things, of hundreds, thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of if-then statements. If the fire alarm goes off, then we do something. If the doorbell rings, then we do something. If we touch something and it hurts, then we do something. If our phone gives us a notification, then we do something. This happens to every person on the planet every day of their life, and it's built into programming as a very powerful statement. If something happens, then do something else. So inside of this if-then statement, I'm first going to put in an operator. And operators are kind of very similar to equations, even the most basic of equations that you guys learned when you were in elementary school, first, second grade. The first one we're going to add in is a less than statement because we want to say that if that apple falls under a certain number, then we want something to happen. So we're going to add in this less than shape right here. Or excuse me, this less than operator right here. That's the same shape as my cutout. And we're going to put it inside of the cutout for our if statement. First, we want to say if our y position, so going back to motion, and I look down for where it has y position right here. And you'll notice the shapes, like if I tried to add in the wrong block right here, this block can't be added into that operator. But this y position block can. And if our y position is less than, so if it falls under right here, let's say 180, pause, resume here. Actually, you know what I think is we're going to actually make that negative 160 for a reason I was going to say. Okay, and now all that's left to do right here is to go and add in my set x and set y to again. And I'm going to do that in kind of a shortcut fashion where I'm going to right click on the first block, duplicate. I have this forever section that I don't need for my purposes here. I'm going to drag it back inside of this if statement. And now that should be, let me turn my volume down so we don't need to hear that intro song over and over again, but that should do exactly what I wanted it to, where it's randomly going to start from the top, fall to the bottom, and if it hits a low part in the bottom, go back up to the top forever, repeatedly, over and over, at least forever for now. We're going to make something else happen, but that is working perfectly. You know, one detail that I actually forgot. Remember with our first sprite, we started off with a hide, wait 8.53 seconds, and then show. We have to do that again for this apple to make it come after the splash screen. So let's actually add that in right now. Let's do a hide. And I think on the last one we had a wait 8.53 or something seconds. But since this is the obstacle, we could just round that up to a 9 or even a 10 to give our main character a second to start moving. And then a looks show. So this should now be doing exactly what we want it to do. Let's give it a test. my wait block, or my show block, did not go where I wanted it to. Let's fix that. Now let's give it a test. All right. And working perfectly. That is exactly what I want to happen. Now, if I made this weight a 9, if I made it a 10, if I made it 11, or made it a 9.2, any of that's fine. I don't want to make it less than we made the weight block for my main character there, and I don't want to make it too long or else, well, then it would just be a dead spot in the game where nothing will be able to happen. All right, so that is what we have so far to have that sprite working. But here's the thing. We don't just want the apple to fall endlessly and never do anything. We don't want that apple to just keep falling, the character be there, hit the character, go through the character, over top of the character, and never have anything happen. So the next thing we have to do is add in some interaction so that it causes there to be a change in the score or something to happen if that main character hits that apple. All right, so to do that, we are going to just add in a little bit more in another if-then statement inside of this forever block for our sprite that is the obstacle. Okay, I'm going to go back to control. I'm going to add in another if-then. Now look very carefully at where I put this. I did forever, a change block. My whole if-then statement that we just worked on to make our apple move, and now connected to that, but below it, our if-then, still in the forever block, our if-then statement that's going to make something happen if the apple hits our main character. Okay, so in my shape here, if then, I want to sense something. I want to sense if these two sprites touch each other. So I'm going to go to my sensing section. I'm going to say touching and put that in that cutout and use the drop down to say player 1, or think of the name for your sprite right here. It might say sprite 1, it might say something else, the name of the actual sprite you chose. I want to change that in that drop down box. And now I need just one line of code that is going to make it so that we have lives in this game. And we could make it really whatever we want, but for this game, we're going to make it so that we have, let's say, 3 lives. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my variable section right here. And I'm going to go to make a variable. I'm going to leave it for all sprites, and I'm going to call this lives. Okay? And I'm going to say that in the beginning, I'm going to set lives to, and the number that I want. Now, if you wanted a different number than 3, you can make it 5. You can make it 1. You can make it 10. All of those are things you could change, but I'm going to make mine 3. And I'm also going to drag over a change lives by and then 1. Okay, now where do I put these? Well, the change lives by 1 happens every time player 1 touches the enemy or the obstacle. So I'm going to add it inside of my if block right here. The set lives to 3, I want to add back at my beginning, which is more in the setup of this sprite, right? So I could put it right here between my when the flag is clicked and my hide wait show. All right, and you'll notice that on the screen it put in this little variable counter, and so we could move that to wherever we want. How about we put the lives right here where it kind of defaulted to on the left? We're going to have another variable for our score. Maybe we could put that on the right. Really, if you want it on the bottom, if you want to change that, that's entirely up to you. And just as one other little note, we have right here that it defaulted to change lives by 1. But if you think about what that means in the terms of programming, it's going to add a life every time we hit one of those apples. What we want it to do is actually subtract a life, so make that -1. And then all that we need is that also if the apple or the obstacle hits our main character, or player 1, we again want this set X and Y back again, right? This will be the 3rd time in this line of code. It's once here, and now we need it one last time here. So I'm going to use my duplicate function again. I'm going to go and put it below my change variable block, and that is going to about finish up this apple for now. Remember I said I was going to keep this video short. This actually gives us a playable game. Um, it's not complete. It doesn't have like a game over screen, doesn't have a score, doesn't have some maybe special things or finishing touches, some bonuses. But to keep this short, that's where we're going to stop for today. I could go and run it one last time and let's see if everything's working and does exactly what we want. Okay, it's starting off well. Oh, it touched him twice. It's down to one life. I'm dodging. I'm moving my character. And it's touching a third time, a fourth time, and it's going into negative numbers. Now, ideally, when we make this game finalized, when it gets to zero, it's going to have a game over, a sound, a splash screen, something like that. But for right now, this is totally complete and playable, and you can see how you're doing. You could go ahead and try it out. You could run it, and you should have everything functioning just like mine. Um, there are many tweaks, there are many changes, there are many things that we could do that we're going to see more next week, and try to finish this up to make it a little more polished, a little more fun. But for now, you have everything working exactly as it should if you've done the same things as me. If you need to make any adjustments, if you need to compare yours to mine, check anything, make sure you do so. And if you have any questions, problems, or anything, you can let me know. If you happen to like doing this, think it's fun at all, you can let me know. Or anything else that you need, email or message in Google Classroom. All right, guys, great job, and I will see you next week.